On this edition of Veterans Health Watch, we'll hear about how the VA Maryland healthcare system in Baltimore City have accepted First Lady Michelle Obama's challenge to end veterans' homelessness by the end of 2015. We'll also hear from a veteran who faced the challenges of homelessness, so please join us. Welcome to Veterans Health Watch, a program sponsored by the VA Maryland healthcare system that provides the latest health and benefits information for Maryland's veterans, their family members, and the local community. I'm Kenya Griffin. In 2010, the White House and VA issued a plan to end veterans' homelessness by the end of 2015. Together with partners nationwide, VA launched the End Veteran Homelessness Initiative, an unprecedented effort to make sure veterans are able to obtain housing, permanent housing, and that veterans at risk of homelessness remain in housing. Joining us to discuss this initiative is Chris Buser, the Chief of Social Work Services for the VA Maryland Healthcare System. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me today.
And Adrian Bridenstine, the Executive Director of the Journey Home for the Baltimore City. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Chris, let's start with a definition of homelessness. I know
Sure.
It sounds like an odd question, but I know the Department of Veterans Affairs does have a definition of homelessness. Please explain that for us.
Right. There is actually a true definition for what homelessness is. We follow the McKinney Act standard for that. And, basically what that means is that if a veteran is staying in a place where their nighttime residence is not fit for human habitation, they're in an abandoned building, they're on a park bench, they're sleeping under an overpass, something like that, or they're not able to afford housing on their own, or if they're in like a government subsidized facility like a shelter overnight, those would be someone that we would consider homeless.
And tell us a little bit more about VA's End Homelessness by the end of 2015 initiative.
Sure. Well, the VA has always had a homeless program, but in the last several years, this has really been ramped up, with the goal of ending veteran homelessness by the end of this year. So we've done a lot, including hiring additional staff, increasing the amount of outreach and partnering with the city so that we can get out there and working with our veterans, helping to identify those folks who are homeless or at risk of homelessness and bringing them in and providing them services, not just housing, but also the health care and the case management that we offer at the VA.
So can you go into a little more detail at the VA Maryland healthcare system? I know you have a homeless veterans program. How does that program work to engage veterans in services?
Sure. We have a three-pronged approach to what we do. Our first prong is outreach. So we are going out to where the veterans are located and where they're staying. So we have outreach workers who are going out to shelters. If we find homeless encampments, sometimes the community will contact us and let us know about a family or a veteran who's at risk of homelessness. So we will go out and meet with those individuals and start talking with them. Once we've engaged with them, then the process is to switch them into a transitional housing program. We have over 400 transitional beds throughout the city of Baltimore and throughout the state of Maryland where we can house veterans. Part of that transitional housing is not just getting them off the street, but it's providing case management services, engaging in health care, substance abuse, mental health counseling, and also to start talking with them about their vocational goals and becoming employed again. The next phase, and this is really where we want to get all of our veterans to, is to permanent and supported housing. One of the main things that we focus on is our HUD Vash program. It's a partnership with Housing and Urban Development where we can have our veterans permanently placed, and we provide supportive case management services with them. We also use other community partners, and many of our veterans, through their efforts at becoming reemployed, will be able to afford housing on their own. So all those are positive ways for us to engage a veteran into permanent supportive housing.
Yeah, it sounds like a complex system, actually.
It is. We have almost 80 individuals who are going out every day, and working, with our veterans. So we've dedicated a lot of effort to it. It's very complex, but it's a very successful program as well.
Great. And Adrian, speaking of partnerships, tell us more about the Journey Home and Baltimore City's program and efforts to end homelessness.
Yes, absolutely. So the Journey Home is Baltimore City's plan to end homelessness. Our community adopted this plan back in 2008, and it really lays out the vision that we want homelessness in Baltimore City to be rare and brief. We think there are lots of ways we can go about doing that, but broadly, we're looking to increase the supply of affordable housing, making sure that people have access to comprehensive health care, sufficient incomes, and really building that safety net so that when someone has a housing crisis, they can quickly resolve that crisis and go back into a home.
Tell us more about making veterans' homelessness rare and brief.
Yeah, I mean, so
What does that mean?
as you mentioned, this is really a call to action that comes down from the top, comes from the First Lady. She launched a mayor's challenge to end veterans homelessness last year, and Mayor Rawlings Blake fully embraced this challenge, signed on to it, and reached out to the VA. And we knew, Baltimore City, our government, we're not going to end veterans homelessness alone, just as the VA is not going to end veterans homelessness alone. It really takes a partnership and joint leadership to make this happen. So we've been really thrilled that the VA has been fully at the table with us on this.
And I know the VA and the mayor's office recently announced this collaboration to this accepting the First Lady's challenge to end veterans homelessness by the end of 2015. What are you doing together? How's this collaboration going to help our homeless veterans? Chris, if you could start.
Sure. Well, it's getting folks together. As Adrian mentioned, we can't do this alone. Having the power of the VA and all the services that we offer, plus all the services that the city is able to bring together and our community partners, is tremendously important. We actually meet on a regular basis. We share information. We use things like our point in time count and other information that comes in from community partners to identify where veterans are located, what services are available. Is it something that the city has to offer? Is it a community partner? Is it something that the VA can offer? We want to use everything that we can to support that veteran in their journey, back to achieving their goals. So part of it's just getting us together, sharing that information, and leveraging the power of our two organizations.
Yeah.
Adrian.
One of the key things that we really want to focus on is making sure that we're getting veterans permanently housed. So as Chris mentioned, we're sharing data and we're tracking that data on a regular basis. We can tell you on a monthly basis how many veterans are being placed into permanent housing. Our goal is to place at least 40 into permanent housing every month, and we've been surpassing that since January. So we feel that we're really making strides to fully embrace this challenge, but to achieve our goal by the end of this year, which is to make veterans homelessness rare and brief.
Chris and Adrian, thank you so much for joining us. It's exciting to see these two agencies come together for the sake of our homeless veterans. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll learn more about the VA services available for homeless veterans, so please stay tuned.
There are numerous benefits for a veteran to enroll in the VA Maryland healthcare system. Number one, they get excellent health care. There's a great pharmaceutical service. They have specialists in all of the areas and use cutting-edge technology. And we have a very good electronic medical health record.
You can keep your current provider as well as come to the VA.
For our veterans, no matter whether they live in Central Maryland or Eastern Maryland, our clinics are conveniently located to where they live throughout Baltimore and the Eastern Shore.
The fact that there are other veterans here that I can talk to and share common experiences with.
The amount of medical attention that I received has been excellent. The VA Maryland healthcare system is your VA. It's America's VA. It's the veterans' VA.
Since I've enrolled at the VA, it has been a great decision, and I encourage every veteran to enroll. They will not regret it.
Welcome back to Veterans Health Watch. Joining us now to talk about VA services and programs offered to homeless veterans are Mary Ann Graham, a Baltimore VA Medical Center case manager for the Housing and Urban Development VA Supportive Housing Program, otherwise known as HUD Vash, and Brandon Pippin, an outreach social worker for the Baltimore VA Maryland healthcare system. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So Marianne, let's get started with more information about the HUD Vash program. How does the VA and HUD work together?
Sure. It's a joint program. So HUD provides a Section 8 voucher and the VA provides supportive case management, so me and my colleagues. And basically what happens is the veteran is screened through the VA and forwarded to HUD to be approved for a Section 8 voucher. The case manager is assigned to the veteran and assists the veteran applying for the Section 8 voucher and going through the process of obtaining the voucher and then searching for housing.
And you mentioned that the veteran is screened and then forwarded to HUD Vash. What do you do? What determines the veteran's eligibility for this program?
A lot of veterans self-refer, but we also receive referrals from other programs, both within the VA and outside of the VA. And we meet with the veteran to determine what their history of homelessness is. The veteran has to be homeless in order to be entered into the program, and the focus of the program is on chronic homelessness.
Once a veteran is accepted in the program, they have a HUD voucher maybe, what should the veteran expect next?
So the process is that they come in for the screening and we usually are able to tell them right then and there if they're eligible. And the next step is to do the application for HUD. And we have different locations, so Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Cecil County. I think we have new vouchers in Anne Arundel County, Harford County. So whichever jurisdiction that they're interested in, we do the application for the Section 8 voucher. It's submitted to the local public housing authority, and then they go through their process of vetting the veteran, and then usually within 2 to 4 weeks they have a meeting which they call a briefing, and the veteran attends that, and that's where they actually receive their voucher and they get more details about the process of leasing up. Once they have their voucher in hand, they can go and look for homes or apartments, and we assist with that. We have housing specialists, the case manager assists, we have peer support specialists that also assist.
So what other mechanisms do you have in place to help these veterans become integrated into society? I'm sure it's been a while that their lifestyles are a little different and housing isn't the end all. So what mechanisms do you have in place to help with that?
So the case management is there to make sure that the veteran has access to VA services, but also community services. So if they're not already connected with primary care, we try to get them connected with primary care. If they have substance abuse or mental health issues, we try to get them connected with the mental health clinical center at the VA, and we also the substance abuse treatment program. But that's not necessarily a barrier to them being involved in the program. So we have obviously some veterans who are very eager to access those services and some veterans who maybe are not ready yet. So we just try to be available to them to meet whatever needs they present to us. It's really kind of meeting them where they are.
That's great. So Brandon, your turn. What about your role in outreaching to veterans? How do you help connect them to the services available?
As part of representing homeless services through the VA, my job is to engage homeless veterans in the community. By doing that, I most of my time in my vehicle. I visit local shelters, local providers, community providers, day programs, soup kitchens. My goal is to the role of outreach for me is building relationships with community providers, and then from there meeting those community providers and identifying veterans that are in need of homeless services.
So you're out there every day meeting these veterans?
Yes, whether it's encampments, collaborating with local outreach teams, and identifying veterans that are in need of services.
And what would you say is one of the biggest challenges you have as an outreach social worker and actually either finding the veterans or connecting them to the services?
I mean, I think it's just the idea of the VA, VAMICs, the encashment area is pretty large. So you're talking visiting Carroll County, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County, and Howard County. Those are all the areas that I cover. So being able to really navigate the areas, having knowledge of the areas, local, there's so many community programs, and being able to touch each and every one of those programs and building meaningful relationships with staff so that when they do encounter a homeless veteran, I'm the first person that they call. I'll say that's the biggest challenge, because you can take a call. You can be in Towson, Maryland one day, and you can be down in Columbia, Maryland the next, and being readily available to address the veteran's need at any given time.
Well, thankfully, you do have a team that
Yes.
you're working with, case managers. And what would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about homeless veterans?
I mean, I think in my experience, Kenya, I think it's the idea of having one narrative represent the entire population of homeless veterans. I think each veteran has their own narrative, their own story to tell. And I think my goal, and Marianne probably agree with me, is really meeting the veteran where they're at. Yes. It's several reasons for homelessness, and not really painting a brush, you're missing out on a lot. There's no specific reason for homelessness, but being able to figure out, identify the problem, and being able to come up with a solution. And with that, it's collaborative effort, team effort, but as well as a relationship that you build with the veteran to determine how can we get you out of this crisis that you're currently in right now.
Great information. Marianne, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I agree with Brandon that you really do have to meet each individual veteran. There's many reasons why someone may become homeless and many different situations that people have. I think that one of the misconceptions is that, it's all new veterans, or people who are in OEF, OIF, that were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I actually feel like we're not seeing those people yet. A lot of the veterans we work with are Vietnam era, post-Vietnam, and so in the first Iraq War. So it's important to make sure that you're dealing with individuals.
Great. And treating each individual case as you get it. And Brandon, could you wrap us up with, if people are looking for information about how they can help a veteran, maybe they know a veteran who is at risk for homelessness or is homeless, how can they get more information?
Well, it's actually we have two avenues. The first step is calling the VA, the national call. It's a 24/7 hotline. That number is 1-877-4-AID-VET. Also, if you have transportation, if you're able to come to meet with us, you can come to the Baltimore VA Annex building, which is located at 209 West Fayette Street. 5th floor. You can meet us. We have walk-in hours from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Great information. Thank you all so much for joining us and for sharing this information, and thank you for the work you do for our veterans.
No, thank you.
We're going to take a short break, but when we return, we'll learn more about VA services for homeless veterans, and we'll hear from a formerly homeless veteran himself. So please stay tuned.
I was homeless with a bag of clothes over 2 years ago.
We have outreach workers, licensed social workers that go out into the community, and they provide assessment, referral, case management services to our homeless veterans. We provide almost anything that the veteran needs in order to try and get him back off the street and back into society.
And I call my mom every day, and she hears it in my voice. She says, "You're alive now and you're living." These people, from a nurse to the guy mopping the floors, they all have one thing in common. They save our lives. I work my incentive therapy program, working in a mailroom. I feel like I am somebody now. It's hard for me to ask for help sometimes. Taking the buses around there, and I seen these homeless vets. And there's help. There's always help.
Welcome back to Veterans Health Watch. Rejoining us are Chris Buser, the Chief of Social Work Services for the VA Maryland Healthcare System, and Adrian Bridenstine, the Executive Director of the Journey Home for Baltimore City, along with Keith Coxum, an Army veteran. Thank you all for joining us. Mr. Coxum, I thank you so much for joining us and being willing to share your story. I understand you're a formerly homeless veteran who received services through the VA Maryland Healthcare System. Can you give us a brief description of your service in the military?
I was a food service sergeant from 91 to 98 in the 82nd Airborne Division.
And what led you to seek healthcare services from the VA Maryland healthcare system?
I actually experienced some financial problems. My father is a combat Vietnam veteran, and he actually urged that I seek some of the resources because I was experiencing a lot of difficulty, pretty much on the verge of being homeless.
Right, and thankfully you sought that care through the VA Maryland healthcare system. Once you sought out the healthcare system, what types of services did you receive?
I had an issue with healthcare, so I received healthcare, some mental health care. I also had a caseworker that worked with me through my transition.
So how would you describe your experience? You mentioned several layers, and I know the healthcare system is pretty comprehensive. How would you describe that overall experience?
It was very supportive. I think a lot of veterans, they're unaware of what resources are available. So as far as my health care, my mental health, reorganizing myself as far as obtaining more education to kind of better situate myself, it was real supportive.
And we had a case manager on earlier who talked about how she works with the veterans to help them maintain all of those services. How was your engagement with the case manager, and how did that help you come to a more stable position?
It was very informative. I think when you're in that situation, a lot of veterans, because they're unaware, they kind of position you and connect you to the necessary resources that you need. So it was, like I said, it was very supportive.
And what would you say to a veteran who maybe hasn't reached out for those services or is unaware? What would you say to that veteran who is maybe in the same state you were in a few years ago?
I would say don't be discouraged. Be aggressive and take responsibility for your transition. I think when they're in that situation, they may have a couple of mental health issues where they feel discouraged, or they might not even have the will to take advantage of it. But if you kind of push through it, there are opportunities and resources there to kind of get you back on track.
Keith, thank you so much for sharing your story and for reminding veterans that the services are available to them. And Mr. Coxum is just one example of the services available to homeless veterans. Chris and Adrian, could you share with us how the VA Maryland healthcare system in Baltimore City plans to continue these services for our homeless veterans?
Sure. Well, you know, what Keith just expressed is very common amongst our veteran population. Myself as a veteran, I remember when I outpressed from the Army, I didn't learn a whole lot about what was available to me as a veteran. So when Keith was talking about not being aware of what the VA could offer, I could really relate to that myself as a veteran. You know, obviously through my job with the VA, I have learned a lot, and I've been able to share that with a lot of veterans that I know, like my brother who's a combat veteran from Iraq and Afghanistan, and many of his friends, because I think a lot of times when people, you know, hear VA, they just think of health care. They might think of a home loan, or they may think of a Montgomery GI Bill benefit, but the VA is a lot more complex. We offer a lot more services. So when Keith was mentioning that, that really resonated, you know, with me. So I think that's why, you know, the first prong, you know, of our three-prong approach is so important, that outreach. It's getting out there and it's letting veterans know that, hey, you are a veteran. I'm always surprised by the number of vets who don't even realize they're eligible for services. I've been trying to train people in the community. Don't ask if someone's a vet. Ask if they served in the military, because many vets, you know, won't see themselves as a veteran. They see that as this elevated position, you know, in the hierarchy, and maybe only reserved for those who have a Purple Heart or a Bronze Star, and they'll kind of discount their own service. So, you know, I usually encourage people to ask, you know, did you ever serve in the military? You'll get a much broader spectrum of individuals responding affirmatively to that. So outreach is so important for us, getting out there in the community and getting the word out, you know, to community partners, you know, to let agencies in the area know what, you know, the VA has to offer and how we can support them. And I think that's one of the great things with our relationship with the city right now is that we're, you know, it's not just outreaching to the veterans, but it's outreaching to our community partners and getting the word out, like with the press conference with the mayor and our director, and doing shows like this to educate the community about what we can offer through outreach, transitional housing, supportive housing, permanent housing, mental health counseling, substance abuse, and all the other wraparound services that we provide. These are the kinds of things that we need to be doing on a routine basis.
And Adrian, it's the Journey Home, I know it's a board of several community agencies or companies, organizations. Tell us more about how this collaboration within the Journey Home helps to serve the homeless population.
Yeah. Well, very similar to the network of services that the VA provides. Through the Journey Home, we also provide a continuum of services. And you know, we're approaching this challenge as if you've ever served in the military, you are a veteran in our eyes, and you may not be eligible for services through the VA healthcare system, but you could be eligible for services that we have to offer. And we want to make sure, and that goes back to the partnership and why this is so important, and that we need to be working together, because if the VA identifies a veteran who may not be eligible for their services, we want to get them connected to our services. There's got to be the support somewhere in the community, and it's connecting all of those dots and making sure that we are providing that wraparound support, as Keith had mentioned, that was so important to him and to our veterans.
And I know, just as a citizen, so I see homeless people and I want to give more. I want to know, what else can I do? I know this dollar I have in my car, or this, you know, this banana or this piece of fruit is not enough. So for those people who are watching, organizations, individuals, what can they do to get involved in this initiative? Chris?
Well, you know, for just the average person in the community, if you know of someone, you know, who's, you know, in danger of becoming homeless, who is homeless, please contact us. Let us know what's going on. We do a lot to help, you know, find veterans homes, but to make that house a real home, we need the support of the community. A lot of our veterans are coming out of homeless programs and they don't have anything. They don't have a bed to sleep on, or they don't have furniture to sit on. So we're also looking for people, if they want to donate things, if they want to donate time, we'll accept that as well.
And I know financial donations would be best, so that you all know what the needs are.
Yes,
of the veterans.
We certainly appreciate whatever anyone can give, but financial donations are better, so that we can, help. There's a lot of things that a veteran needs when they're moving in, and the money is a lot more flexible for us to be able to help them purchase, startup supplies, cleaning supplies, things of that nature.
Great. Adrian?
Well, and the other key partner that we haven't talked a whole lot about is just the private sector and the business community. And we're really embracing this challenge throughout the end of the year, but as our mayor has mentioned, and as the VA Medical Center's director has mentioned, this is an ongoing challenge. It can't just stop at the end of 2015. So we do need long-term investment, not only from our public sector partners, but also philanthropic partners, corporate partners, and members of the business community. So we really encourage people to get involved that way as well.
And I think it's also important for us to mention that it is a lot cheaper as a society for us to house individuals who are homeless than it is to keep pouring money into services that don't actually resolve their homelessness. So financially, this is more beneficial to the community and also to the veterans themselves.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your efforts to address homelessness in Maryland and specifically in Baltimore City. We're going to wrap up this edition of Veterans Health Watch, but if you have questions about today's show or suggestions for future topics, please call us at 1-800-463-6295, extension 7101, or visit us on our website at maryland.va.gov. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. And remember, if you are a veteran or you know a veteran who is not using the VA Maryland healthcare system, please connect with us. We'd love to serve you. Please join us next time.
I think one of the exciting campaigns that the VA Maryland healthcare system has embarked on is the TeleVet campaign. As a veteran myself, I'm really more interested in what a fellow veteran's perspective on their healthcare service is going to be. So I would really encourage all of our veterans who have been to a VA Maryland healthcare facility to tell fellow veterans about their experience.
I wish someone would have told me about the VA healthcare years ago. If you see a veteran, ask them if they're using VA healthcare.
Make a difference. TeleVet.